because the Bible does have some references in it that appear to be talking about dinosaurs. And one such evidence, one such scripture is found in Job 40, verse 15. And what it says is, "Behold now Behemoth, which I have made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly." So this is a big creature that has a very strong midsection. "He moveth his tail like a cedar." This one's actually really important because being from the Pacific Northwest, we're very familiar with cedars, how big they can get and how strong they are. And this particular evidence is going to pop up several times throughout the presentation. "His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron." And these critters, they estimate the bigger ones could have been as much as 25 tons. That's an awful lot of weight for bones to be supporting. "He, the chief of the ways of God, he lieth under the shady trees. The shadowy trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth." So what could he be talking about? This is a really big creature. And there's actually some consensus through a number of Bible commentaries. They all want to name the same animals that this particular set of scripture is talking about. And they want to equate this to hippos and elephants. Well, if we go back to the part about the tails being as big as cedars, well, that doesn't really fit with either one of them. They have very small tails. It doesn't match them at all. So what does it match up with? Because we have a particular dinosaur that seems to fit the bill here pretty well, and that would be the Apatosaurus. And that, man is pretty small compared to this thing, and it towers above him like it towered above Job, and its tail, as you can see in this drawing, is very strong, it's very large, and he can hold it up. Well, up until sometime in the 90s, that's not what they thought these dinosaurs looked like. Before the 1990s, they thought they looked like this. And what's the big difference here? Is this is your evolutionist view of what a dinosaur looks like, and his tail is entirely on the ground. And his legs are bent, and his stomach is very close to the ground. Now, if you go back to that last picture, you can see that's strikingly different from this picture. Where his legs are extended, and the center of his mass is right above his legs, and his tail's up in the air. So why did they have this belief? Well, evolutionists before the 90s were trying to say that dinosaurs had evolved into lizards. And so they did their best to take these dinosaur-like bones they found and make them look like lizards. Well, they have since found out that's not what they looked like. In fact, even in cartoons at the time, for anybody who's seen the Flintstones, which I'm sure there's a bunch of you out there who have, this is what Fred Flintstone looked like as he was driving around what appears to be an Apatosaurus in his rock quarry. Now, what's interesting about this is, where's his tail? His tail, if you watch the show, is always on the ground. He's dragging it around behind him. So that's an example of a land dinosaur, Behemoth. Is there anything else in the Bible that kind of suggests a dinosaur? Well, there is another one, and that's in Job 41. And this one's Leviathan, which is a sea-based dinosaur. It says, "Canst thou draw out Leviathan with an hook? Canst thou put an hook in his nose? Canst thou fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? None is so fierce that dare stir him up. His scales are his pride, shut up together as with a close seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. Out of his mouth go burning lamps. Apparently this was another fire-breathing dragon of a dinosaur, and sparks of fire leapt out. The sword of him that layeth at him cannot hold. The spear, the dart, he maketh the deep to boil like a pot. He maketh the sea like a pot of ointment. So this critter, being in the sea, is apparently even more fierce than Behemoth. This was a pretty nasty critter, and they're basically saying you don't even want to try to hunt him because your hooks and your spears and your swords aren't going to penetrate its scales. So this is a kind of a picture of what one of these types of dinosaurs might have looked like, and that picture includes a great white shark that is a modern day great white shark. So it's considerably bigger than that. So we've got now a land dinosaur and we've got a sea dinosaur. Do we have anything else in the Bible? Is there anything else that might be referring to another dinosaur or another type of dinosaur? Well, there is, and that would be found, it's a short verse, it's only mentioned briefly, but it's in Isaiah 30, verse 6, and it says, "Into the land of trouble and anguish, from whence come the young and old lion, the viper, and the fiery flying serpent." Well, that's interesting because the lion and the viper, which happens to be a snake, are definitely real creatures that we still see today. So why would God then tag on to these two real creatures a mythical one, which would be the fiery flying serpent? And the serpent, by the way, is another name for a reptile. So it's a fiery flying reptile. Well, I think we've probably heard of fiery flying reptiles before, but they pretty much looked like that. They were dragons. And actually, before 1840, dragon was a commonly used term. And when they started digging up these huge dinosaur fossils, they continued calling them dragons. It slowly transitioned to where they were calling them dinosaurs. So our first translation of the Bible, which occurred into English in 1600s, there was no such a word as a dinosaur. So they had to use something else. And they used Behemoth and Leviathan. They didn't use these dinosaur names. And obviously with this dinosaur or this dragon, this is a highly stylized picture of a dragon, but we did have flying reptiles. And apparently we had flying reptiles that could breathe fire. That would be kind of a scary thing to have. And this leads us into discussion